About me is that I was actually born on the 8th month of the 9th day of 1989. My mom tells me that I was actually able to sing before I could talk. Now, I'm not sure if that's true because I don't really have memory of that per se. However, what I do know is that I started music lessons at a very young age. Specifically, I did music lessons with Suzuki Music, then music for young children, which is piano for youth in Canada, and then I actually started studying guitar with the teacher. And when I was 10 years old, I got my first drum kit. And so by the time I reached teenage years, I was kind of I was at a stage where I could play more or less all rock instruments relatively well. When I was 16, I had the luxury of actually playing with a band. The band that I first jammed with actually was called Traction, and there's these 4 guys in my high school that everyone thought they were really cool and listened to them. And I was always hoping in the back of my mind that I'd be able to be in that band. But as it turns out, the guitar player had to go to university in Ontario, and so their band kind of went on a hiatus. And I had a window of opportunity with the drummer and the singer to play bass for them, and it was something different, you know. I got it in my head to join the Canadian military in the reserve army. I was in high school at the time, and I just finished my grade 10, and I decided that I should join so I could get some good things on my resume and to develop a high standard of fitness, and to also feel like I was contributing to society. I'm sure any soldier that joins the military can appreciate their mother or their father's reaction for when they say that they first want to join. And actually, Canada hadn't had any actually direct wars in decades. So I explained to my mom, to my family, that there wasn't really much of a risk because Canada hadn't had a direct war. Like most of the things Canada were involved with military-wise were peacekeeping missions or humanitarian work. My mother was concerned at first, but I reassured her by saying that Canada hasn't been in a theater of war for years and years, and at that time the operation going on in Afghanistan wasn't really considered a direct war per se, but of course nowadays people refer to that mission as actually a straight-up war. I was determined to finish the first course called Basic Military Qualification, although I did find it very difficult because I was kind of spoiled growing up or whatever. I wasn't used to doing things for myself or working with people in teamwork and leadership and all these skills that I developed throughout the course, but I did manage to complete it. And though it wasn't until the following summer that I actually continued with my training to become a fully qualified soldier. I actually decided to not continue my education and to do the radio operators course with the military, and also to do basic infantry reconnaissance with the military. For those of you familiar with reconnaissance, it's extremely difficult thing to succeed in. You have to have a very high standard of fitness and stuff like this. But I did manage to keep up with the fitness aspect of things, and I was doing relatively well. But in about the 4th or 5th week of the course, I did not pass because I failed my 2IC or second in command role as a reconnaissance patrolman. and that was really devastating for me, because I decided to leave my studies and do military stuff, and I just didn't make the cut, you know. After I finished the reconnaissance course, I didn't really do a whole lot for 2 or 3 months. I was really down about how I didn't pass, and I wanted to make up the course and to have another opportunity, and also have a steady course of income and a good job. So I was actually about to sign a regular force contract with the Canadian military to work for 4 or 5 years. However, my parents were urging me to, you know, to continue my education, that it would be a better option. And at the last minute, I agreed to actually come to Qatar, which is where my mom had been working for a couple of months, teaching in the school over here. And so I came to Qatar. It was quite a culture shock at first. Wasn't really used to the idea of seeing men wearing completely white-looking dresses and women wearing all black. It's not something you see very often or at all in my part of the world. However, I did manage to meet 2 really good friends of mine at that time when I was in Qatar for 4 months. One of them is Qatari and one of them is Indian, Yaqub and Rashid, and they went out of their way to be extra nice to me, even though I was a new guy that didn't really know anybody.
Okay, guys, take a look at this now. Check the difference of the tires now. What?
Well, the first time I saw Rasool was in college, the first day of registrations, and he seemed like a very quiet guy, you know. Just he took his registration paper and headed over to class. Later that afternoon, I met him in my physics class, and he was quite shy actually. And then, you know, as usual, we were playing around, me and Yaqub, and we started going and troubling him a little bit, and then making a few jokes, and that's when we got acquainted to him. And that's actually the first time when I met him.
I thought at the beginning he's lost, or like he doesn't know about that there is a class going in half an hour. So like he was preparing and he was very quiet.
He wasn't a Muslim at that time when we met him, and he didn't quite talk about religion then. And it was only later after a semester. After 2 semesters actually, he had gone back to Canada and come back. At that time he didn't really talk much about anything. He stayed to his books, and he was, as Yaqub said, he was a little lost actually. He was just quiet and he was in his own world. And he just stayed quiet, did his working class and headed off to the bus, and he would go home.
Back to the Prophet. Join Sheikh Amar in the program Back to the Prophet, wherein he teaches us practical lessons from the Prophet's life and how this can help us to overcome our challenges in the present.
We talk about the life example of the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, seeking guidance for ourselves. In the early days after the revelation of the Holy Quran, the Muslims were greatly persecuted. So much so that quite a few Muslims had to leave Arabia and migrate to Africa to live among Ahl Kitab, Christian people who followed the gospel of Christ.
Back to the Prophet in Ramadan on Huda TV.
It was a short time after that, actually. I was driving in the car with Rashid and Yaqub, and I started to wonder about Islam every day. I would hear the call in the morning, and I'd hear it throughout the day. And I noticed people would always go to the prayer, whereas in Christianity, people seem to neglect their prayer or don't take it seriously or as something that's essential. So this actually sparked my interest again about Islam. I asked Rashid, because in Christianity we have the golden rule. It says, "Do unto others as you would have do unto you," and so I asked if they had anything in Islam like that, and he said yes, and he recited the Arabic to me and translated what it meant in English, and I realized that it was essentially the same thing. And I started asking more friends questions about Islam, about Jesus's or Isa's role in the Quran, and I was amazed. Like, it just seemed to be so true.
No, it seemed like he had a goal in mind, because when I met him, he already had a background about Islam. He already he knew something about it. He had information, and he started asking me questions about ethics of Islam.
It was at that point he started taking me to Fanar, which of course is the Islamic Community Center here in Doha, and there's a man that works there who's English, who's been in Islam for 5 or 6 years now, who's extremely knowledgeable, who would inform me more things about Islam, more of information about all the prophets, and relating it to what I had already known from being in Christianity.
I was with him when he took that major step. Like, I met him right after he had that first thoughts, but when he was serious about it, and he was right about to take that step, I was with him, and I told him, like, you have to be ready for such a major step in your life, and I was supporting him. I was supporting him so much, though I knew there would be some negative impact later on, like, you know, the surroundings, like people around him, like the new Russell. Some might not accept him, but still I told him, like, if you want to do this, I am with you and I am supporting you, and you have to know that what you're doing is the right thing.
I had already had strong belief that this was the truth, and even though I didn't officially say the statement in Arabic that makes people Muslim, I was actually practicing prayers with my friends, and I was fairly dedicated because I was about 100% positive that this is actually the truth. So when I accepted Islam, Brother Dominic asked me, like, you know, so when are you going to make this official, or when are you going to make your, when are you officially going to enter? Or he was asking me if I had already done it, and I said, well, I'm completely convinced. And he said, Alhamdulillah. Within a few weeks or so, I actually got a certificate from FINAR declaring that I was officially Muslim. And within a couple of weeks of being in Islam, I actually was able to go for Umrah, which was completely amazing unto itself. It completely affirmed my belief of everything that I had read or listened to from knowledgeable people. Breaking the news to my mother was a bit of a delicate issue, because obviously my mom had been Christian for quite some time, decades and decades, and I wouldn't like to directly come out and say that she was wrong or that I was going against what my mom and dad believed. So I sort of hesitated for a bit in directly saying that I had accepted Islam, but I in my discussions, like during dinner or whatever, I would mention things like miracles of the Quran and mention teachings from the Sunnah and these sorts of things, just to sort of gauge her reaction for it. And I noticed that some stuff she was actually impressed with. So, but still, I didn't quite break the news to her just yet. After spending a day out in the desert with her and some of her students from her class at college, I asked her, could she come to a dinner with me? And I just called one of those private drivers, and we came to Sheikh Abu Saad's house, where actually a man named Yusuf Estes was staying with him.
نعم، أنا كنت في زيارة لأحد الأخوة، فوجدته لديهم جالس، فتحدثنا معه ووجدنا أنه قريب عهد بإسلام، ومن باب الاهتمام به وتعليمه فقد تم التعرف عليه وزارنا، وبعد ذلك التقينا مع الأخ الداعية يوسف إستس في البيت عندنا، وتم التحدث معه عن الإسلام وعن هذا وتثبيته على الدين الإسلامي، وكان لديه رغبة في دعوة والدته إلى الإسلام.
For those of you who don't know Yusuf Estes, he's a man that actually was a preacher in Christianity before he entered Islam, and he told his amazing story to my mom, and talked about many of the miracles that exist in the Quran, about how things about how the process of how a child is developed, and all of the science that exists in the Quran, all the amazing things that are written, and how they're proven to be true. And on the drive home that night, she even told me, like, you know, I didn't hear one thing that didn't make sense, or that didn't seem like the truth. Even though up at that point in my life I didn't know a whole lot about Islam, I knew how I knew how difficult it was for some people to actually make that journey to Saudi Arabia. Some people wait their whole life and don't get to do it. So even though I wasn't that at that high level of awareness of how significant being in Mecca or being in Medina really is, I knew it was something that if I didn't take the opportunity to do it, then who knows if I would ever get to do it again, sort of thing. So I told my dad I was going. He was just telling me, you know, Russ, like, be careful, and you know, he seemed pretty worried about it. And I actually know the exact reason why he was worried about it is because they aired this movie on CBC, it's a Canadian station, whereby a man is working or in Saudi Arabia, and the conditions are bad, and he actually has to put himself in a mailing container and mail himself out of the country. And my dad saw that movie, and he thought, I guess he must have thought that I would have to mail myself out, but thank God the whole trip for me was great, really. Like, you know, even as a Christian, I knew about Abraham, and now that I've done Umrah in Mecca, I saw Abraham's house. I saw the well that God built for his wife. I drank the water, and it was amazing and really great experience. Certainly, I wasn't used to wearing the ihram because I've never worn anything like that before. Usually, I'm a jeans and t-shirt type guy, but I mean, I had the bottom on fairly secure, so that was a relief. And the top did come loose a couple of times, but I was able to correct it relatively quickly, and